Hi, I'm Dave Wurzel, and you're watching PHTV4 Bookshelf. At Bookshelf, we look at a variety of books from a variety of categories that we're going to recommend for you. And today we're taking a look at February 2024 releases. With me to take a look at these books, Matt Matkowski, Head of Public Services at Palos Heights Library. Matt, thank you for putting this list together. We kind of narrowed it down a little bit. We're going to highlight some and at least mention a few others here. In February, again, still, I think we're in a slow period for publishing, right?
Yeah, it's starting to pick back up, but not too many big releases.
Okay. But some of these names you'll definitely recognize, and there's definitely books here to recommend. Some very interesting titles coming up. All right, so let's take a look at the first category, and this one is Historical Fiction, A Nation Divided.
Yes, and this comes to us from Kristen Hanna, who is
another big name author.
Huge, yes. Yeah. It's called The Women. And it is a story of a turbulent, transformative era in America, the 1960s. An intimate portrait of a woman coming of age in a dangerous time, and an epic tale of a nation divided by war and broken by politics, of a generation both fueled by dreams and lost on the battlefield. The Women is the story of one woman gone to war, but it shines a light on the story of all women who put themselves in harm's way to help others. Women whose sacrifice and commitment to their country has all too often been forgotten.
It sounds like a very interesting story, and certainly in her hands, this could be a very good read.
Yeah, she usually does a lot of beach reads, so this sounds kind of different for her, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Next category we're going to take a look at is Historical Noir in an Alternative America. I haven't read this, I've only read a couple books in this genre where it's, you know, the United States now, but something different has happened historically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the premise they're working here. Still the United States, still functioning as it does, but there's a significant change here, and we're working a noir detective thing at the same time. So in this category, we're going to take a look at Cahokia Jazz by Francis Spufer. This book was described as a noirish detective novel set in the 1920s that reimagines how American history would be different if, instead of being decimated, indigenous populations had thrived. All right, so what does the United States look like under that thing? Cahokia Jazz inhabits a different version of America now through the lens of a subtly altered 1920s, a fully imagined world full of fog, cigarette smoke, dubious motives, danger, dark deeds. All that sounds like the noir stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in the main character of Joe Barrow, we have a hero of truly epic proportions, a troubled soul to fall in love with as you are swept along by a propulsive and brilliantly twisty plot. So, where does the story begin? A snowy night at the end of winter, Barrow and his partner find a body on a roof of a skyscraper. And historical noir right there.
Yes.
All right. Sounds interesting. I'm always kind of curious about the alternative America thing, you know, different historical background. All right, next category we're going to take a look at is another famous series, famous character. Cotton Malone is back, so those of you who are big into this author, you know what I'm talking about. Mystery, action, and adventure category. Matt, what have you got?
Steve Berry, The Atlas Maneuver. And in this one, the latest Cotton Malone adventure, Cotton unravels a mystery from World War II involving a legendary lost treasure worth billions, known as Yamashita's gold, from the stolid banks of Luxembourg to the secret vaults of Switzerland, and finally up into the treacherous mountains of South Morocco. Cotton Malone is stymied at every turn. Each move he makes seems wrong, and nothing works until he finally comes face to face with the Atlas Maneuver.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. And I think this book begins with a historical background, and then it jumps to
modern. Yeah.
Okay, it sounds good. Sounds like a good read, a fun read. Next category we're going to take a look at is a small town rural fiction. This is Float Up, Sing Down by Laird Hunt. Float Up, Sing Down is a story of a single day, all right, so one book covering a whole day, but in that day, how much teeming life. The residents of this rural town have their routines, their preferences, their joys, grudges, and regrets. Gossip is paramount. Lives are entwined. Retired sheriffs climb corn bins and muse on lost love. French teachers throw firecrackers out of barn windows, and teenagers borrow motorcycles to ride the back roads. Each of the 14 stories that float up, sing down, follows one character's day in the life of one of Hunt's most beloved and enduring landscapes. And I'm kind of curious, I like the premise, different characters, all one day, the small town kind of
Yeah, it's
experience.
an interesting concept.
It is, it is. All right, next category we're going to take a look at is psychological crime thriller.
Yes, A.J. Finn is back. He wrote The Woman in the Window, which was very, very, very popular a few years ago. He's back with End of Story. For fans of Knives Out, it comes a spellbinding thriller. It starts off with, "I'll be dead in 3 months. Come tell my story." So writes Sebastian Trapp, reclusive mystery novelist, to his longtime correspondent, Nikki Hunter, an expert in detective fiction. With mere months to live, Trapp invites Nikki to his spectacular San Francisco mansion to help draft his life story, while living alongside his beautiful second wife, Diana, his wayward nephew, Freddie, and his protective daughter, Madeline. Soon, Nikki finds herself caught in an irresistible case of real-life detective fever.
It sounds good, and based on the other book you mentioned, and also the Knives Out. So those of you familiar with the Knives Out story, if you're into that, again, that murder mystery story, sounds like there's a good one here. All right, next category we're going to take a look at is described as one critic as a grand spectrum of human experiences, and this is 14 Days by Margaret Atwood. This one also is very different, unique, the structure of it.
Yeah.
This book is set in a Lower East Side tenement in the early days of the COVID-19 lockdowns. 14 Days is actually a collaborative novel from the Authors Guild with an unusual twist. Each character in this universe, eccentric cast of New York neighbors, has been secretly written by a different major literary voice. So you'll recognize some very big name authors here, Margaret Atwood and Tom Yorge and John Grisham and several others. I think Neil Gaiman has one in here, Celeste Nig is there's several here. But anyway, so the premise to the book works like this. 1 week into the COVID-19 shutdown, tenements of a Lower East Side apartment building in Manhattan have begun to gather on the rooftop to tell stories. And with each passing night, more and more neighbors gather, bringing chairs and milk crates and Overton pails, and gradually the tenants, some of whom have barely spoken to each other, become real neighbors. I like the premise of the different authors' voices representing the different neighbors, and this kind of gathering and storytelling.
For sure.
So that was put together by Margaret Atwood, even though there's several different authors there, and that's 14 Days. And one more book, and then we'll take a look at some other authors, but one more we want to feature, another big name author, and the category here is Russell and Holmes Are Back.
Yes.
A historical mystery, which is really maybe not accurate. It's a Sherlock Holmes type mystery with his partner Russell.
Correct, and this is The Lantern's Dance by Laurie R. King. Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes, hoping for a respite in the French countryside, are instead, as always in these books when detectives are on vacation, caught up in a case that turns both bewildering and intensely personal. After their recent adventures in Transylvania, Russell and Holmes look forward to spending time with Holmes' son, the famous artist Damien Adler, and his family. But when they arrive at Damien's house, they discover that the Adlers have fled from a mysterious threat. The secrets of the past appear to be reaching into the present, and it seems increasingly urgent that Russell figure out how a journal and lantern are related to Damien, and possibly to Sherlock Holmes himself.
Classic Holmes stuff, and obviously the Mary Russell character adds a whole new wrinkle to,
Right.
I think I've read 2 of these books. They're good. They're very fun. They're entertaining. And you get to revisit Sherlock Holmes. So definitely worth taking a look at. The Lantern's Dance, Laurie King. All right, so those are the books we're going to kind of highlight on. But again, there are a lot of big name authors that have books coming out in February. Name you're very familiar with. James Patterson has another book, Crosshairs. We've got The Ghost Orchid by Jonathan Kellerman. 3-Inch Teeth by C.J. Box. Again, those are huge name authors, and their fans, I'm sure, are waiting for those books, ready for them. We've also got Death of a Spy by M.C. Beaton, The Guest by B.A. Paris, and The Chaos Agent by Mark Greaney. So again, a lot of good reading to look forward to.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Matt, thank you together for putting the list together. Thank you for coming in and sharing these recommendations with us.
My pleasure as always.
I'm Dave Warzone. You've been watching PHTV4 Bookshelf, and we've been looking at February 2024 releases. Thank you for watching, and good reading.